Hello everybody. This week we're going to be covering some things regarding velocity and grooves. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Okay, so one of the most important things when dealing with MIDI clips is to take care of the velocity values. The velocity values basically tell the whatever instrument the MIDI clip is sending information to how loud the initial attack will be. It's basically how loud that note's going to be played. Now, if you're just programming in MIDI data step by step, these will usually be the same value all the way across. If you're using a MIDI keyboard that has that's velocity sensitive, these factors will be programmed in based on how hard you actually hit the keys. But for most people just programming them in, they'll just be a flat value, usually about 100, and it's very easy to make your MIDI clip sound very dry, very robotic. So I'm going to go show you guys a couple things on how to make that, give it a little bit more life into it. So as we saw last time, the kick steps and all the steps feeding the step sequencer come from these banks of MIDI clips here. Now you see in step 1, downbeat, there's one note and the corresponding velocity value. Now if you go across, you can see that it's a little bit subtle sometimes, but the velocity values change as the steps progress down the timeline. Now this is to give it a bit of flow. If there's a real human playing it, obviously not every single hit is going to have the exact same attack every time. So the way I've programmed this is so that the downbeats, like the 1, 2, 3, 4, all have higher velocity ratings than the offbeat. So this would be like this one here. And then the kind of off beat, the ones in between, have actually even lower corresponding velocity value. So if you were to play these just a straight run, it would have kind of an ebb and flow wave. You can see that would actually follow the kind of flow of the MIDI clips as it goes through. You can see it kind of flows like that. Now I have applied these velocity values to all the clips, all the notes, through all the instruments, kick, snare, hi-hat, percussion, through all the different iterations of it, so that there's consistent kind of flow for the whole step sequencer. Now the velocity is a good start, but it's still only part of it. One of the easiest things you can do to add life to any MIDI clip, or even audio clip for that matter, in Ableton Live is by using grooves. Now grooves are basically kind of data sets, imprints of parameters taken from either from clips or from old pieces of hardware or just different types of things that add a quote-unquote feel to them. Now they're very easy to access. If you go down here, this little symbol is for your groove pool. Just click that, open it up. Now I've already imported a bunch of different grooves, and the one I'm using is the MPC 16 swing. Now how you apply these grooves is in any clip, you just click on it, then in your clip view here there's a groove section. So anything you've put into your groove pool is here in this drop down menu. So I've selected this. To add things to your groove pool menu, you can just go to your library, then there's a whole section called grooves, and we've got tons of different grooves that you can add. So within each groove there are these parameters right here: bass, quantized, timing, random, velocity, then an overall amount. So every groove has its own kind of data set within these kind of parameters here that it can apply to any MIDI or audio clip. but you can still have control over how much of that blends with the kind of natural parameters that are in your clip. Now, if they're straight MIDI clips you've programmed, chances are all these are going to be super straight, so anything you add to affect it is going to be all just going to be a partial amount of whatever the groove is. Now, if they're actual pieces played by human, like you could get a real live drum kit part in here, audio clip, and you could apply these, and then it would kind of mash the groove parameters with the kind of natural feel that drummer had in that clip. So how it works is basically the bass, you choose whatever the bass of quantize you want to be for the groove. So if you want it to be against a 16th note kind of quantization, so all the parameters are applied, shifted to that, to your 16th note, that's the kind of the root of everything. You can select that. Obviously for the step sequencer, since it's a 16 step piece, I use 16th note quantization. Quantize, now this is kind of a way for you to non-destructively quantize your piece. In the step sequencer, since everything is single notes on exactly quantized, this doesn't really apply to this. But say if you're using an audio clip, or if you played MIDI with your keyboard, what you didn't snap it to quantize, you can use this to adjust the quantization that applies before the groove parameters kick in. So you can choose to dial in exactly how much quantization you want for your clip. Now, timing, this is the amount of kind of feel that's programmed within the groove, how much of that you kind of want applied to your clip. This is just whatever the feel of that groove is, that's how much you can dial in. Random, this is a kind of random parameter for the different how the notes are kind of placed and timed and whatnot. So you can select the randomness to add a human element to it, since humans will never ever exactly play every single note right on the beat. You can add this to add a little bit of little human nature to it. Velocity, this takes blends kind of how much of the velocity data that was in the groove, how much of that blends with your velocity data that you've programmed in the clip. So this is especially important for what we're talking about, because I have programmed all of these velocities for all the steps, but I've also applied a certain amount of blending with the velocity values that this groove has. So the resulting combination is kind of unique and gives a bit more human feel. And then obviously you have an overall amount that you can dial in to adjust how much of these parameters overall affect everything. Now, as you can see, I only have a small amount of this overall groove added to the step sequencer. And this is because while I like the MPC swing style, I did not want a full-on swing groove applied to the drum loops that play in the step sequencer. Now, since I'm mostly using this for electronic production, dance music, DJing style kind of setups in those scenarios, swing is not always a good thing to have, especially say if you're doing, you know, 4 on the floor kind of dance style stuff. But just having this little amount here with, you know, all the timing, random, and velocity settings that I've set up, it really just adds that little subtle bit of humanization that gives it just that twinge, you know, that just makes it not quite as robotic. Now, you can kind of hear this if I play a clip. You really notice, here I'm going to play this clip here, you'll notice it in the hi-hat. So here I'll play this with just the 15%, which I use most of the time. So, Now, if I increase this, you'll definitely notice the swing come in. So you can see it definitely can add a bunch of swing, this particular groove. You can choose from all different types. Obviously everyone has its own kind of settings, and it gives its own feel. I like to use this one and just dial a little bit to give that little bit of humanization. So now while I have applied these velocity settings and the groove settings to a drum-based instrument, in this case, these same things can apply to any type of data you're working with. Now, obviously, since this is a drum kit for electronic music, it's still going to be a bit more straight and more quantized in time than, say, a string section pattern that you want to play. That you might want a lot more random, different velocities. You might want to draw velocity curves in all your stuff. You'd want to play around with that quite a bit, just to get the right feel. And like I said, you can do this to audio clips too. So I think the Groove Pool is a very often underused tool that Live has provided. Its integration with clips in Live is so great, and it's so easy to use, and it's just change and modify to as much as you want, and it can really help breathe a lot of life into a lot of clips. So I highly recommend you start playing around with this and try to figure out the best way you can use it in your sets. It's a really great tool. So I think that's about it for velocity and groove in this video. I'll be back next week with some more tips and tricks in Ableton Live. So you guys have yourself a good week, and I'll see you next time. All right, bye.